My brother Bobby is a convicted pedophile who served 5 years for molesting a 7-year-old. But when he got out, my entire family demanded I let him near my 3 daughters. So when I refused, they orchestrated a massive harassment campaign, including having him show up at my 8-year-old's birthday party with a doll in a bathing suit until I had to get a restraining order. But then my mom spent her retirement savings on his legal fees to fight me, while the whole family stalked us and filed false CPS reports until we had to pay him $30,000 just to leave us alone. The day my brother Bobby got released from prison, my mother called me 17 times. I knew what she wanted before I picked up. She'd been preparing me for months with comments about forgiveness and second chances. But there was no way in hell I was letting a convicted pedophile near my 3 daughters. Bobby had served 5 years for what he did to his neighbor's daughter. The girl was 7. My oldest daughter had just turned 8. But somehow, I was the family monster for saying no. Mom showed up at my house the morning of his release. She had this whole speech prepared about how he'd changed and found God. She pulled out a folder full of certificates from prison programs. He completed every course they offered, she said, like that erased what he did. Where's your Christian heart? I kept my answer simple. He wasn't welcome in my home, not for dinner, not for holidays, not for 5 minutes. My girl's safety came first. Mom's face went from pleading to pure rage. Those are his nieces, she spat. You're denying him his family. The guilt campaign started immediately. My sister Beth called me crying about how Bobby had nowhere to go. Dad sent me Bible verses about forgiveness every morning. Even my Aunt Helen, who lived 3 states away, felt the need to remind me that everyone deserves a second chance. But they saved the real manipulation for Sunday dinner. I'd stopped at Mom's to pick up my grandmother's ring she'd been resizing. The whole family was there. Bobby, too. He was sitting at the kitchen table like nothing had happened, like he hadn't destroyed a child's innocence. Uncle Bobby! My daughter Lily shouted before I could stop her. She ran toward him with her sisters close behind. I've never moved so fast in my life. I scooped up all 3 kids and headed for the door. Bobby had the audacity to look hurt. I just wanted to meet them, he said softly. I'm their uncle. That's when I lost it. I told him being blood didn't give him access to my children. I reminded everyone in that room what he was convicted of. Mom actually covered her ears. Dad muttered something about dwelling on the past. Beth accused me of traumatizing the girls. The smear campaign started the next day. Mom told her church I was keeping her grandchildren from her. She conveniently left out why. Beth posted on Facebook about how some people don't understand redemption. Various relatives commented with prayer hands and Bible quotes. My phone blew up with messages from people who didn't even know the full story. Then Bobby started showing up places. The grocery store, the park, always maintaining distance, always claiming coincidence. He'd wave at the girls from across the playground. I started documenting everything. Date, time, location, witnesses. My husband installed security cameras after we saw him drive past our house 3 times in one day. The breaking point came during Jane's birthday party. We'd rented the community center, invited her whole class. Halfway through cake, Bobby walked in carrying a present. Mom followed behind him, smiling like she'd orchestrated something beautiful. Every girl deserves their uncle at their birthday, she announced. Parents started grabbing their kids and leaving. One father recognized Bobby from the registry website. Within minutes, our daughter's party was ruined. Jane cried in the bathroom while her classmates' parents whispered in the parking lot. The present he brought? A doll in a bathing suit. I filed for a restraining order the next morning. That's when the real war started. Mom hired Bobby a lawyer with her retirement savings. They claimed I was alienating him from the family. The lawyer argued that Bobby had served his time and deserved access to his relatives. My own mother testified against me in court. The judge granted a temporary order but warned it might not hold up long term. Bobby had completed his probation. He wasn't technically breaking any laws by existing near us. The final hearing was set for next month. Meanwhile, the family harassment intensified. Dad started showing up at my husband's work, begging him to talk sense into me. Beth tried to pick up the girls from school, claiming I'd asked her to. The school had to ban my entire family from the approved pickup list. Even relatives I hadn't spoken to in years chose sides. Last night, I found Lily looking at old Christmas photos on my phone. Why don't we see Uncle Bobby anymore? She asked. Grandma says you're being mean to him. I wanted to scream. Instead, I hugged her tight and changed the subject, but I knew this was far from over. The final hearing was in 2 weeks, and Mom had made it clear she'd mortgage her house if necessary to fight me. That's when I realized just how far this would go. I knew I had to get ahead of whatever Mom was planning. The mortgage threat wasn't empty. She'd already blown through her retirement savings on Bobby's lawyer. I started making calls to every family law attorney in town, scheduling consultations. If I could conflict them out by meeting with them first, Mom would have to look elsewhere for representation. My husband took time off work to help with the girls while I prepared for court. We enrolled them in after-school programs to minimize any opportunity for surprise family visits. The school principal agreed to personally escort them to the bus after Beth's pickup attempt. 3 days later, I got a call from my cousin Sarah. She'd always stayed neutral in family drama, so I was surprised to hear from her. She asked if we could meet for coffee. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Sarah looked exhausted when she sat down across from me at the cafe. She glanced around nervously before pulling out her phone. I need to show you something, she said, scrolling through her messages. Your mom's been organizing the family. She has a group chat. My stomach dropped as I read through the messages. 23 family members were actively planning ways to force contact between Bobby and my girls. They discussed showing up at school events, accidentally running into us at stores, even having different relatives file for grandparent rights to overwhelm me legally. The worst part was seeing how they talked about me. According to them, I was mentally unstable, vindictive, and poisoning my children against their loving family. Mom had convinced them all that Bobby's conviction was a misunderstanding, that the girl's family had overreacted. Sarah slid her phone back into her purse. I have kids too, she said quietly. I looked up the court record records, what Bobby did. It wasn't some misunderstanding. I spent the rest of that day screenshotting everything Sarah sent me. The group chat revealed their entire playbook. They planned to pack the courtroom with supportive family members. Several aunts and uncles had written character letters for Bobby. Mom had even convinced my childhood pediatrician to write about what a devoted brother Bobby had been. That evening, I found Bobby's truck parked across from our house again. This time, Mom was with him. They sat there for an hour, just watching. When my husband went outside to confront them, they drove away. But they came back the next morning, and the next. The security footage became crucial evidence. Our lawyer said the repeated surveillance could strengthen our case, but warned that family court judges often favored reconciliation. The fact that Bobby had completed his sentence worked in his favor. The system considered him rehabilitated. I started sleeping poorly, jumping at every car that drove by. The girls noticed the tension. Jane asked why we couldn't eat at restaurants anymore. Lily wanted to know why Grandma couldn't babysit. I gave vague answers about everyone being busy, but kids are perceptive. They knew something was wrong. A week before the hearing, things escalated. I was loading groceries when I noticed a woman watching me from across the parking lot. She approached as I closed my trunk, introducing herself as Patricia from Child Protective Services. Someone had called in a report about me denying my children access to family. My hands shook as I provided her my lawyer's information. Patricia was professional but thorough. She needed to interview the children, inspect our home, review their medical records. The complaint alleged emotional abuse through family alienation. The home visit went well. The girls' rooms were clean, the fridge was stocked, their artwork covered the walls. They chatted happily with Patricia about school and friends. But I knew this was just another tactic to wear me down. Mom was playing dirty. Our lawyer subpoenaed the CPS complaint. No surprise, it came from Mom's address. She'd formally accused me of emotional abuse for protecting my children from a convicted pedophile. The irony would have been laughable if it wasn't so terrifying. Bobby got bolder as the hearing approached. He started jogging past our house every morning, always careful to stay on public property. He'd wave at the windows, knowing the girls might see. I kept them away from the front rooms, but it meant living like prisoners in our own home. The family pressure intensified too. Dad left voicemails about how I was destroying the family. Beth sent long emails about forgiveness and healing. Relatives I'd blocked created new social media accounts to message me. They all sang the same tune. I was being cruel, unreasonable, unchristian. Then came the letters. Mom had orchestrated a campaign where family members wrote directly to my daughters. The letters came addressed to them at our home. I intercepted them, of course, but the violation felt profound. They were trying to manipulate my children directly now. I read each letter before shredding them. They all followed a template. How much they missed the girls, how sad Uncle Bobby was, how Mommy was keeping them apart. One aunt included photos of Bobby looking dejected. Another sent drawings Bobby had supposedly made for them in prison. Something feels off about how organized this family campaign is. 23 relatives in a group chat, coordinated letters, everyone suddenly caring so much about Bobby's rights. I'm curious why the whole family is this invested in defending someone with his conviction. My husband installed additional locks and an alarm system. We varied our routes to school and activities. I started grocery shopping in the next town over. We essentially went into hiding while living in our own home. The weekend before court, Mom made her biggest move yet. She filed for emergency grandparent visitation rights. Her petition painted me as an unstable mother who'd cut off family access without cause. She demanded immediate supervised visits with the girls, with Bobby allowed to attend as their uncle. Our lawyer called it a kitchen sink approach. Throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. The emergency petition would be heard alongside our restraining order request. Mom was betting that a judge would compromise, maybe deny the restraining order but grant her some visitation. I spent that weekend organizing evidence, security footage, documentation of every encounter, the group chat screenshots, character references from teachers and doctors who actually knew our family. My husband helped me create a timeline showing Bobby's escalating behavior. The morning of the hearing arrived gray and drizzling. I dressed carefully, conservative but not severe. My husband wore his only suit. We dropped the girls at school early, my stomach churning at leaving them even with the new security measures. The courthouse parking lot was full of familiar cars. Mom had indeed mobilized the troops. I recognized aunts, uncles, cousins, family friends. They stood in clusters, whispering and shooting us dark looks as we walked past. Inside the courtroom, Bobby sat in the front row with Mom and their lawyer. He wore a new suit and had gotten a haircut. He looked like a respectable uncle, not someone on the sex offender registry. Mom dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, the picture of a grieving grandmother. Our side of the courtroom was nearly empty. Just us, our lawyer, and surprisingly, Sarah. She gave me a small nod as we took our seats. I'd never felt more alone yet, more determined. Whatever happened today, I wouldn't let them win. The judge entered, and I gripped my husband's hand. Everything we'd fought for came down to this moment. My girl's safety hung in the balance, and I was ready to fight with everything I had. The judge's gavel struck the bench, and proceedings began. Our lawyer presented the security footage first, showing Bobby's repeated surveillance of our home. The timestamps revealed a pattern of escalating behavior. Mom's lawyer countered by arguing that a man had the right to jog on public streets. During the first recess, I noticed Beth in the hallway making phone calls. She kept glancing at me while whispering urgently into her phone. My husband stayed close, his hand on my back as we navigated through clusters of hostile relatives. Back in session, Mom took the stand. She painted herself as a heartbroken grandmother denied access to her grandchildren. She produced photos of happier times, family gatherings where Bobby played with cousins. Her tears seemed genuine as she described how I'd torn the family apart. Our lawyer's cross-examination revealed the truth beneath her performance. When asked directly about Bobby's conviction, Mom claimed the victim's family had blown things out of proportion. She insisted Bobby had simply been showing affection. Several relatives in the gallery nodded along with her delusions. The judge ordered a brief recess to review evidence. In the hallway, Dad cornered my husband near the water fountain. I watched Dad's face redden as he gestured wildly, clearly trying to pressure my husband into making me drop the case. My husband simply walked away, leaving Dad standing there fuming. Sarah testified next, bringing printouts of the group chat messages. Mom's lawyer objected repeatedly, but the judge allowed them as evidence of coordinated harassment. Sarah's hands trembled as she read aloud their plans to ambush us at various locations. The afternoon brought Bobby to the stand. He'd clearly been coached, speaking softly about rehabilitation and redemption. He claimed he only wanted to be part of his niece's lives, to watch them grow up. His performance might have been convincing if you didn't know what he'd done. Our lawyer destroyed his facade with simple questions. Bobby couldn't explain why he'd chosen to jog past our house specifically. He fumbled when asked about the birthday party intrusion. His calm demeanor cracked when confronted with the victim impact statement from his case. During the lunch break, I discovered Mom had arranged for several church members to be present. They filled an entire row, wearing matching crosses and shooting disapproving looks my way. One woman I recognized from Mom's Bible study group actually hissed at me in the bathroom. The CPS investigation results were presented next. Patricia herself testified that she'd found no evidence of abuse or neglect. She noted that the children were thriving and well-adjusted. Mom's lawyer tried to spin this as evidence that the girls needed their extended family, but it fell flat. My testimony came last. I detailed every incident, every violation of boundaries, every attempt to manipulate my children. I showed the letters they'd sent directly to my daughters. I explained how we'd changed our entire lives to avoid Bobby's stalking. Mom's lawyer attacked my credibility, suggesting I was paranoid and controlling. He implied I was using my children as weapons in a family feud. I stayed calm, sticking to facts and documentation. The security footage spoke louder than his accusations. The judge announced he would review all evidence and issue his decision within 3 days. As we left the courtroom, Bobby made his move. He stepped directly into my path, forcing me to stop. His eyes held a coldness that chilled me as he leaned close enough for only me to hear his whispered threat about seeing the girls soon. My husband immediately positioned himself between us, and our lawyer documented the interaction. Bobby stepped back with a smirk, rejoining Mom and their attorney. The threat was subtle enough to maintain plausible deniability, but the message was clear. That evening, we found our mailbox stuffed with letters from various relatives. Each one condemned our actions and demanded reconciliation. Someone had also left a Bible on our doorstep with specific verses about forgiveness highlighted in yellow. The next morning brought new challenges. Jane's teacher called to report that Beth had shown up at school claiming a family emergency. The school had followed our protocols and denied her access, but Beth had caused a scene that upset several students. I drove to the school immediately to speak with the principal. She showed me security footage of Beth arguing with the front desk staff, demanding to take the girls for a family emergency. When refused, Beth had started crying loudly about being kept from her nieces. The principal assured me they would maintain vigilance, but suggested we might consider a different school. The situation was creating disruption, and other parents had expressed concerns. I left feeling defeated, knowing Mom's campaign was working exactly as intended. At home, I found my husband installing additional cameras around our property. He'd taken the rest of the week off work after Dad had shown up there again, this time with Uncle Helen's husband. They'd tried to corner him in the parking lot during lunch. Sarah called that afternoon with disturbing news. The family group chat had evolved into planning sessions for after the judge's decision. They discussed filing multiple legal actions to drain our resources. Some suggested showing up at the girls' activities to establish accidental contact. I spent hours documenting these new threats for our lawyer. Each piece of evidence felt like another weight on my shoulders. The girls sensed the tension, becoming clingy and anxious. Lily had started having nightmares, though she couldn't articulate what scared her. 2 days after the hearing, Bobby escalated further. He showed up at the grocery store where I was shopping with the girls. He didn't approach directly, but positioned himself where the girls would see him. He waved enthusiastically, calling out their names. I abandoned our cart and rushed the girls out of the store. Jane asked why we were leaving without our groceries. Lily wanted to know why we couldn't talk to Uncle Bobby. Their innocent questions broke my heart as I struggled to explain without frightening them. That night, we discovered someone had been in our backyard. Nothing was taken or damaged, but our daughter's outdoor toys had been rearranged, their playhouse door was open, and someone had left 3 wrapped presents inside. The security cameras had mysteriously malfunctioned during that exact time frame. My husband called the police while I checked every lock and window. The officers took a report but explained that without proof of forced entry or footage, there was little they could do. The presents contained dolls, each one dressed in bathing suits like the one from Jane's party. The psychological warfare was taking its toll. I jumped at every sound, checked locks obsessively, and barely slept. My husband started working from home to maintain constant vigilance. We were prisoners in our own lives. Exactly what Mom and Bobby wanted. The morning of the judge's decision arrived with a thunderstorm. We dressed carefully again, preparing for either outcome. I'd arranged for a trusted friend from my mother's group to watch the girls, someone completely disconnected from my family. The courthouse was even more packed than before. Mom had mobilized additional supporters, including several prominent church members. They wore color-coordinated outfits and carried signs about family unity. Local news had somehow been alerted to the family dispute. Inside the courtroom, tension crackled like electricity. Bobby sat between Mom and their lawyer, wearing another new suit. The families coordinating their outfits like they're attending a wedding instead of trying to force kids near a predator. Someone clearly missed the memo on what family unity actually means. He kept turning to smile at family members, playing the role of persecuted victim to perfection. Mom clutched a handkerchief dramatically. The judge entered with a thick folder of documents. His expression revealed nothing as he began reviewing the case. He noted the evidence of stalking, the coordinated harassment, and the CPS complaint that appeared retaliatory. He also acknowledged Bobby's completed sentence and rehabilitation programs. As he spoke, I felt my heart racing. He discussed the balance between protecting children and maintaining family bonds. He referenced cases where courts had reunified families after criminal convictions. Each word felt like another step toward losing everything we'd fought for. Then he shifted to discussing the evidence we'd presented. The security footage showed clear patterns of stalking. The group chat messages demonstrated coordinated harassment. The birthday party incident showed blatant disregard for boundaries. His tone grew stern as he addressed Bobby directly. The judge's decision was mixed. He extended the restraining order for 1 year, citing the stalking behavior and harassment. However, he granted Mom limited grandparent visitation rights, 1 supervised hour monthly at a neutral location. Bobby would be prohibited from these visits. Mom's side erupted in whispers and movement. Some seemed satisfied with the partial victory, while others appeared angry at the restrictions. Bobby's face showed fury beneath his calm facade. He whispered urgently with their lawyer, clearly planning their next move. Our lawyer explained this was actually a victory. The restraining order would be harder to challenge now, and the supervised visitation gave us control over the circumstances. But I felt sick knowing Mom would use those visits to manipulate my daughters. As we prepared to leave, Beth intercepted us in the hallway. She launched into a tirade about family destruction and selfishness. Security intervened when she grabbed my arm, trying to force me to listen. Her removal caused another scene that drew stares and whispers. Outside, reporters waited on the courthouse steps. Someone had leaked details about the family torn apart by false accusations. We pushed through with our lawyer's help, ignoring shouted questions about denying children their family. Mom emerged moments later, playing the grieving grandmother perfectly for the cameras. The drive home felt surreal. We'd won the main battle, but at tremendous cost. The war was far from over. Mom had her foot in the door now, and Bobby would undoubtedly use her visits to maintain indirect contact. The restraining order was only paper protection. At home, we found more gifts on our porch despite the security cameras. This time, 3 identical necklaces with heart pendants. The message was clear. Bobby wasn't giving up. He'd simply found new ways to violate boundaries while technically following the court order. That evening, our lawyer called with concerning news. Mom's attorney had already filed paperwork requesting expanded visitation. They claimed the supervised visits were unnecessarily restrictive and harmful to the grandmother-grandchild relationship. The legal battles would continue indefinitely. I sat with my husband after the girls went to bed, planning our next moves. We discussed relocating, changing schools, even legally changing our names. The weight of protecting our daughters while maintaining their normal lives felt impossible. Every option meant sacrifice and loss. Sarah texted screenshots from the family chat. They were celebrating Mom's partial victory and planning how to use the visits strategically. Someone suggested having Bobby accidentally appear at the visitation location. Others discussed wearing recording devices to gather evidence against me. The next morning brought new challenges. Jane's best friend's mother called to politely uninvite her from a sleepover. Word had spread about the courthouse drama and Bobby's presence on the registry. She was sorry, but she had to think of all the children's safety. I understood her position, but watched Jane's face crumble when I explained. She didn't understand why she was being punished for adult problems. Lily and our youngest picked up on the tension, becoming whiny and difficult. Our family was fracturing under the pressure. My husband's parents finally called after maintaining silence throughout the ordeal. They offered support but suggested we might be handling things too extremely. Couldn't we find a middle ground? Their well-meaning ignorance stung worse than outright hostility. We spent the week establishing new routines around the court orders. I met with the supervised visitation coordinator to establish strict protocols. No gifts, no photos, no messages to relay. Mom would have exactly 60 minutes monthly to visit under professional supervision. The first visit was scheduled for the following week. I prepared the girls carefully, explaining Grandma would visit them at a special place. They seemed excited but confused about the restrictions. Jane asked if Uncle Bobby would be there too, and my heart sank at having that conversation again. Meanwhile, Bobby found legal ways to maintain presence in our lives. He volunteered at community events we'd previously attended. He joined organizations where we had memberships, always careful to maintain the required distance, but ensuring we'd know he was there. Dad escalated his own campaign, showing up at my husband's workplace despite warnings. He'd wait in the parking lot with Bible verses and printed articles about forgiveness. Security eventually banned him from the property, but he simply moved to the public sidewalk. Beth started her own harassment through social media. She created multiple accounts to message our friends, sharing her version of events. She painted me as mentally unstable, claiming I was denying my children loving family relationships. Some friends distanced themselves, unsure what to believe. The stress manifested physically. I developed migraines and insomnia. My husband's blood pressure spiked. The girls began acting out at school, their grades slipping. We started family therapy, adding another expense to our mounting legal bills. Our lawyer warned that Mom's team was preparing a larger strategy. They'd hired a private investigator to document our lives, looking for any ammunition. Every public outing became a potential trap. Every interaction with the girls could be twisted into evidence. I caught Bobby photographing our house from the legal distance one morning. He made sure I saw him, even waving at the security camera. The message was clear. He was documenting everything too, building his own case for when the restraining order expired. The family group chat Sarah monitored revealed their long-term plans. They discussed waiting out the restraining order while building evidence of parental alienation. They coached each other on what to document and how to present themselves as victims. We installed panic buttons throughout the house and established code words with the girls. If anyone approached them unexpectedly, they were to find a trusted adult immediately. The weight of turning my children into cautious, fearful versions of themselves crushed me daily. A week before the first supervised visit, Mom sent a formal letter through her lawyer. She requested permission to bring photo albums to share family history with the girls. When When we declined, she accused us of cultural erasure and denying the children their heritage. Bobby grew bolder as the visit approached. He started attending businesses near the visitation center, establishing legitimate reasons to be in the area. He couldn't enter during the visit, but he could position himself nearby. The law was on his side. I met with the visitation supervisor to express concerns. She assured me their protocols were strict, but I could see the exhaustion in her eyes. She'd dealt with families like ours before. She knew how determined individuals could circumvent even the best safeguards. The night before the first visit, none of us slept well. The girls sensed our anxiety despite our efforts to stay calm. Jane asked repeatedly if something bad was happening. Lily clung to me constantly. Our youngest regressed to behaviors she'd outgrown months ago. That morning, I dressed the girls carefully, wanting them to look well cared for, but not giving Mom ammunition about keeping them from her. My hands shook as I braided their hair. My husband double-checked the recording device our lawyer had approved us to carry. The visitation center was a converted house designed to feel homey while maintaining security. We arrived early to familiarize the girls with the space. They explored the playroom while I filled out paperwork and reviewed the rules one final time. Mom arrived exactly on time, dressed impeccably and carrying a small bag the supervisor would search. Her face lit up seeing the girls through the window, and for a moment I saw the grandmother she could have been if she hadn't chosen Bobby over their safety. The supervisor took the girls to the visitation room while we waited in a separate area. I watched on the closed circuit monitor as Mom hugged them tearfully. She'd brought approved coloring books and crayons. For 30 minutes it looked like a normal grandmother visit. Then Mom started her manipulation. She spoke about missing family gatherings and how sad everyone was. She mentioned Uncle Bobby's name repeatedly, watching for their reactions. The supervisor redirected her several times, but Mom was skilled at subtle emotional manipulation. When the visit ended, the girls were confused and upset. They didn't understand why they couldn't see Grandma at her house or why Uncle Bobby couldn't visit too. The car ride home was filled with questions I struggled to answer honestly without damaging them further. That afternoon, our lawyer called with disturbing news. I'm curious why the judge would grant any visitation rights when there's documented stalking and harassment. Seems like there's something about this legal process we're not fully understanding here. Bobby had filed his own petition claiming defamation and emotional distress. He argued our false accusations had damaged his reputation and relationships. It was a transparently vindictive move, but it would cost us more money to fight. The war of attrition continued. Every legal filing drained our savings. Every harassment incident stole our peace. Every manipulation attempt damaged our children's innocence. Mom and Bobby were systematically destroying our lives while staying just within legal boundaries. The supervised visits became our new battlefield. During the second visit, Mom brought a family scrapbook she'd assembled. The supervisor had approved it after checking for inappropriate content, but Mom had been clever. She'd included photos of Bobby at every family milestone, positioning him as the beloved uncle the girls were missing. I watched through the monitor as she pointed to each picture, telling stories about Uncle Bobby's kindness and generosity. The girls absorbed every word, their confusion growing. When they returned to the waiting area, Jane immediately asked why Uncle Bobby couldn't come to the visits if he was so nice. That week, Bobby's defamation lawsuit moved forward. Our lawyer filed a motion to dismiss, but the judge allowed it to proceed to discovery. This meant depositions, document requests, and more legal fees. Bobby's strategy was transparent: bleed us dry financially while maintaining his victim narrative. The family's coordination reached new levels. Different relatives began appearing at the girls' activities. An aunt would show up at dance class, a cousin at soccer practice. They maintained legal distance but ensured their presence was felt. Other parents started noticing the pattern of family members lurking around. Sarah continued feeding me information from the group chat. They'd developed a rotation schedule to maintain constant pressure without any individual violating the restraining order. They documented every sighting of us, building what they called their alienation portfolio. 3 weeks after the court decision, I discovered Mom had enrolled in the same gym where I took yoga classes. She attended different sessions but made sure I saw her in the parking lot. She'd wave sadly, playing the rejected grandmother for anyone watching. The girls' behavior deteriorated further. Jane became withdrawn and stopped inviting friends over. Lily's nightmares increased, though she still couldn't explain what frightened her. Our youngest began having tantrums reminiscent of her toddler years. The family therapist suggested the constant tension was affecting them more than we realized. Bobby escalated his presence strategy. He got a job at the hardware store 2 blocks from the visitation center. Now he had legitimate reason to be in the area during every visit. I spotted his truck parked strategically where we'd have to pass it entering and leaving. During the third supervised visit, Mom pushed boundaries further. She gave each girl a locket with family photos inside, including Bobby. The supervisor made her remove them, but the damage was done. The girls didn't understand why they couldn't keep Grandma's gifts. Our financial situation grew dire. Between legal fees, therapy costs, and security measures, we'd depleted our savings. My husband took on extra shifts while I freelanced from home to avoid leaving the girls with sitters. The stress showed in both our faces, dark circles becoming permanent fixtures. Then came the accident, or what appeared to be one. I was backing out of a parking space at the grocery store when another car hit me. The driver jumped out, apologizing profusely. Only when I saw Uncle Helen's son did I realize this was orchestrated. He insisted on calling police, creating an official report that painted me as distracted and careless. The deposition for Bobby's defamation case was scheduled for the following month. Our lawyer prepared me for grueling questions designed to make me appear unstable. They'd use every family incident, every protective measure, as evidence of my irrational behavior toward a reformed man. Mom's visitation requests escalated. She petitioned for unsupervised visits, citing the successful supervised sessions. She included affidavits from family members attesting to her character and my unreasonable restrictions. Each filing required response. Each response cost money we didn't have. I started noticing cars following me during errands, different vehicles, but always maintaining the same careful distance. When I mentioned it to our lawyer, he said proving coordination coordination would be nearly impossible. They'd learned from the group chat evidence to be more careful. The fourth supervised visit brought new manipulation. Mom spent the entire hour telling the girls about family traditions they were missing. Birthday parties, holiday gatherings, summer barbecues, all painted as magical events stolen from them. She never mentioned why they couldn't attend. Bobby's presence grew bolder. He started jogging past the visitation center during our visits, timing it perfectly to cross our path. He'd wave at the girls through the window while maintaining legal distance. The supervisor documented it, but technically he wasn't violating any orders. Our home became a fortress of anxiety. We installed more cameras, added window sensors, and kept curtains drawn constantly. The girls asked why we lived like we were hiding. I struggled to explain without terrifying them or poisoning them against family they still loved. The deposition arrived like a storm. Bobby's lawyer questioned me for 6 hours, dissecting every decision I'd made since his release. They painted my protective measures as paranoid delusions, my documentation as obsessive behavior. I maintained composure, but inside I felt myself cracking. 2 days later, Jane's teacher called with concerns. Jane had written a story about a family torn apart by a mean mommy who wouldn't let anyone visit. The teacher recognized the emotional distress and suggested additional counseling. Another expense, another acknowledgement of how this war was damaging my children. Mom's next move was calculated. She began attending the same church we'd switched to after leaving hers. She sat across the sanctuary, dabbing at tears during services. Church members who didn't know our history saw a grandmother separated from her grandchildren. Some began avoiding us. The financial pressure mounted. We received notice that Bobby had hired a second attorney, someone known for aggressive litigation. The message was clear. They could afford to escalate. We couldn't. My husband suggested borrowing from his 401k, but I knew that would only delay the inevitable. During the 5th supervised visit, something shifted. Mom dropped her careful facade for just a moment. When the supervisor stepped out briefly to use the restroom, Mom quickly whispered something to the girls. I couldn't hear it through the monitor, but I saw their faces change. Jane looked scared, Lily confused. In the car afterward, neither girl would tell me what Grandma had said. They exchanged glances but remained silent. That night, I found them huddled together in Jane's bed, whispering. When I entered, they immediately stopped talking. The secret Mom had planted was growing between us. Bobby filed additional motions in his defamation case. He claimed lost wages from jobs he couldn't get due to my slander. He demanded access to my social media accounts, email records, and personal journals. Our lawyer fought each request, but judges often favored broad discovery. The family's pressure campaign evolved. Instead of direct contact, they began a whisper campaign in our community. Parents at school received anonymous letters about the family situation. Local businesses where we shopped got calls questioning our mental stability. Slowly, our world shrank further. Sarah warned me that Mom was planning something for the holidays. The group chat buzzed with cryptic references to Christmas justice and reunion planning. They'd learned to speak in code, making their intentions harder to document. The 6th supervised visit was scheduled for December 23rd. Mom arrived with a bag of wrapped presents the supervisor had to inspect. Each gift was appropriate: books, puzzles, art supplies, but each carried subtle reminders of what the girls were missing. A puzzle of Mom's house, books about family traditions, art supplies, and Uncle Bobby's favorite colors. That evening, I discovered why the girls had been secretive. Lily finally broke down and told me what Grandma had whispered. She'd said Uncle Bobby had presents for them hidden at her house, special gifts he'd made himself. If they could convince Mommy to let them visit, they could have them. The manipulation was masterful. Now my children had a secret with their grandmother, a promise of gifts from the uncle I was protecting them from. They didn't understand why I was being mean about presents. Jane accused me of ruining Christmas. On Christmas Eve, we found 3 packages on our doorstep. The security cameras showed they'd been left at 3 a.m. by someone in dark clothing who knew exactly where our blind spots were. Inside were handmade dolls, clearly crafted with patience and skill. The note said, "Love, Uncle Bobby," in careful handwriting. I wanted to throw them away, but the girls had already seen them. Taking the dolls would make me the villain who stole Christmas presents. Keeping them meant Bobby had successfully invaded our home again. I compromised by putting them in the garage, promising we'd figure it out later. Christmas morning was subdued. The girls opened their presents without enthusiasm, clearly thinking about the dolls in the garage and the mysterious gifts at Grandma's house. My husband and I exchanged worried glances over their heads. We were losing this war of attrition. The day after Christmas, our lawyer called with bad news. The judge in Bobby's defamation case had ruled partially in his favor. While dismissing the wage loss claims, the judge found that I had potentially damaged his reputation beyond the scope of protecting my children. A trial would determine damages. I sat in my kitchen, staring at the legal documents. We couldn't afford a trial. The retainer alone would bankrupt us. Mom and Bobby had succeeded in their war of financial attrition. I had to make an impossible choice: surrender or lose everything fighting. That night, I found my husband in the garage looking at the dolls Bobby had made. Each was crafted with disturbing attention to detail, dressed like our daughters. The implications made my skin crawl, but legally, they were just gifts from an uncle. We had no proof of sinister intent. The next morning brought another blow. Jane's best friend's mother called to say they were switching schools. The drama surrounding our family had become too much. Other parents were considering the same. My daughter would lose her friends because I insisted on protecting her. I made my decision during the 7th supervised visit. Watching Mom manipulate my daughters with practiced ease, seeing their growing resentment toward me, feeling the financial noose tightening, I knew I had to change tactics. I couldn't win by playing defense anymore. After the visit, I instructed our lawyer to offer a settlement in Bobby's defamation case. The number made me sick. $30,000 we didn't have, but it was less than a trial would cost. More importantly, it came with conditions Bobby couldn't resist. The settlement included a permanent no-contact agreement, broader than than the restraining order. Bobby's greed won over his desire for access. He accepted the settlement, probably believing he'd find ways around it later. We liquidated our retirement accounts to pay him. It felt like paying ransom to a kidnapper, but it bought us something precious, a stronger legal barrier. Mom's reaction was swift and vicious. She filed for expanded visitation rights, claiming the settlement proved I'd been wrong about Bobby, but our lawyer had anticipated this. The settlement included Bobby's acknowledgement that continued contact could be detrimental to the children's well-being. The judge reviewing Mom's petition saw through her manipulation. He noted the pattern of escalating behavior, the coordinated harassment, and the use of supervised visits to undermine parental authority. Instead of expanding access, he reduced it to quarterly visits with stricter supervision. Mom aged years in moments when the decision was read. Her investment in Bobby had cost her everything: her retirement savings, her relationship with her grandchildren, and now even her limited access. She'd gambled everything on forcing her will and lost. The family group chat exploded with rage and disbelief. Sarah sent me screenshots of their meltdown. Some blamed Mom for pushing too hard. Others turned on Bobby for taking the money. The coalition that had terrorized us for months fractured into bitter factions. We used the breathing room to rebuild. Jane's school agreed to implement additional security measures. We found a new therapist who specialized in family manipulation dynamics. Slowly, carefully, we began explaining age-appropriate truth to the girls about why Uncle Bobby couldn't be around them. The quarterly visits with Mom became less traumatic. With stricter supervision and reduced frequency, she couldn't maintain the same manipulation. The girls began to see her as a distant relative rather than a central figure in their lives. It wasn't ideal, but it was manageable. 6 months later, Bobby violated the no-contact agreement. He sent birthday cards to each girl through a third party. Our lawyer immediately filed for contempt. This time, the judge had no patience. Bobby faced jail time or a substantial fine. He chose the fine, further draining Mom's resources, since she still funded his legal battles. The extended family gradually retreated. Without Mom's money funding their campaign, and with the legal barriers solidified, most found it easier to move on. A few maintained their stance, but their individual efforts lacked the coordinated impact of the group assault. On the anniversary of Bobby's release, I sat in my backyard watching my daughters play. They laughed freely, no longer looking over their shoulders. We'd paid a terrible price: financial ruin, family destruction, months of terror, but they were safe. Their innocence was scarred, but not shattered. My husband joined me, bringing coffee. We didn't need words. We'd survived by choosing the battles we could win and accepting the costs of those we couldn't. The war wasn't over. It never would be completely, but we'd achieved what mattered most. The girls ran to us, faces bright with joy. They'd adapted to our new normal with the resilience children possess. They understood now why some family members weren't safe, why love sometimes meant keeping distance. Hard lessons learned too young, but learned nonetheless. As I hugged them close, I thought about the price of protection. Every parent would pay it without hesitation, but few understood the true cost until the bill came due. We'd paid in money, relationships, and innocence. But watching my daughters play safely in our yard, I knew I'd pay it again. The restraining order would need renewal eventually. Mom would get her quarterly visits. Bobby would likely probe for new weaknesses. But for now, in this moment, my girls were safe. Sometimes that's the only victory that matters. Not winning the war, just surviving each battle and protecting what you love most. I find it curious how the mom aged so much when she lost. Was she truly believing she was doing the right thing, or was this about control all along?